At the city's most exclusive charity gala, my stepmother and her friends laughed as I served champagne in a stained uniform. They didn't know I owned the hotel. I owned the charity. I owned everything. And in 10 minutes, I was about to destroy them all in front of 500 witnesses. What you're about to hear will shock you to your core. Before we start, hit that subscribe button because this revenge is so perfectly executed, you'll want to watch it twice. Trust me, the ending will leave you speechless. Now let me take you to that night and explain how I got there. My name is Audrey Harrington, though for the past 7 years I've been living like I didn't deserve that name. I'm 28 years old and I live in what used to be my mother's mansion. Notice I said used to be because even though I technically still live there, it hasn't felt like mine for a very long time. Not since my stepmother Patricia moved in and turned my life into a living nightmare. Let me take you back so you understand how I ended up serving drinks at a charity gala in a stained waitress uniform while wearing a fortune in hidden assets. My mother, Catherine Harrington, died 7 years ago when I was 21. At least that's what everyone believed. A tragic car accident, they said, brake failure on a rainy night. My father, Gerald, was devastated. I was destroyed. Mom wasn't just my mother. She was my best friend, my mentor, my entire world. Within 6 months of her death, my father married Patricia. Looking back now, I see how calculated it all was. Patricia had been my mother's private nurse during her final months. She was always there, always helpful, always comforting my grieving father. I was too numb with grief to see what was really happening. Patricia didn't just bring herself into our home. She brought her 2 adult children with her. Caroline, who was 25 at the time, a former beauty queen with a cruel streak hidden behind her perfect smile, and Jason, who was 30, a businessman with expensive tastes and even more expensive secrets. At first, things seemed normal. Well, as normal as they could be with a new family suddenly living in our home. But slowly, things changed. Patricia started suggesting that I seemed depressed, unstable. She convinced my father that I needed structure, simple work to keep my mind occupied. Father, drowning in his own grief and guilt, believed everything she said. I went from being Catherine Harrington's beloved daughter to being treated like a charity case in my own home. Within a year, I was no longer eating at the dining table. I had been moved from my childhood bedroom to what used to be the guest room at the end of the hall. My clothes became simpler, grayer. Patricia said bright colors weren't appropriate for someone in my mental state. I became Patricia's personal assistant, which really meant I became her servant. I cooked their meals, cleaned their rooms, ran their errands. And the worst part? My father was traveling so much for business that he rarely saw what was happening. When he was home, Patricia put on a perfect performance. She was kind to me in front of him, concerned about my well-being. The moment he left, the mask came off. Caroline treated me like I was invisible unless she needed something. She would throw her clothes on my bed and expect them to be washed, ironed, and returned within hours. She would spill things deliberately and watch me clean them up. Her friends thought I was actually the help. I'll never forget the day one of them asked Patricia if I came with good references. Patricia just smiled and said, "She's learning." Jason was worse. He was cruel in a cold, calculated way. He would corner me in hallways and remind me that I was nothing now, that I should be grateful they even let me stay in the house. Once, when I tried to stand up to him, he shoved me against the wall and told me that if I ever caused problems, he would make my life even more miserable. I believed him. But here's what none of them knew. Here's the secret I carried for 7 long years. My mother didn't just leave me a house or some money. Catherine Harrington wasn't just wealthy. She was Catherine Harrington of the Harrington family. Her family owned Harrington Global, a massive conglomerate that included hotels, real estate, and pharmaceutical companies. The empire was worth $8.2 billion, and my mother left every single penny of it to me. There was just one catch. A clause in the trust said I couldn't access the inheritance until I turned 28 or got married. My mother had built that protection into the trust because she was smart. She knew that money given too young could be dangerous. She wanted me to grow up first, to understand responsibility. What she didn't anticipate was dying so young herself. What she didn't know was that the woman she hired to care for her would end up stealing her husband and tormenting her daughter. I found out about the trust 3 months after Mom died. Her lawyer, Mr. Harrison, contacted me secretly. He explained everything and told me that my mother had suspected Patricia might be dangerous. Mom had seen something in Patricia's eyes, something calculating. That's why she made the trust ironclad. No one could touch it but me, and only when I reached the right age. For 7 years I kept that secret. For 7 years I endured their cruelty, knowing that one day everything would change. And I'll be honest with you, there were nights when I wanted to give up. Nights when I cried myself to sleep in that small room, wondering if I was strong enough to last until my 28th birthday. But every time I wanted to break, I would think of my mother. I would remember her strength, her kindness, her belief in justice, and I would hold on for one more day. 3 months before my 28th birthday, everything escalated. Patricia called me into the dining room one evening. The whole family was there, sitting around the table like some twisted version of a normal family dinner, except I wasn't given a seat. I stood at the end of the table while they ate. Patricia smiled at me, and I knew immediately that something terrible was coming. She announced that she had wonderful news. She had arranged for me to marry Leonard Wagner, a business associate of my father's. My blood ran cold. I knew who Leonard Wagner was. Everyone in our social circle knew. He was 60 years old, had been married 4 times, and every single one of his wives had either died under mysterious circumstances or disappeared. There were rumors, dark whispers about abuse, about violence, and Patricia wanted me to marry him. I refused. For the first time in 7 years, I looked Patricia in the eye and said no. The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. Patricia hit me across the face in front of everyone. Caroline laughed. Jason smirked. And my father, my own father, said nothing. He just looked down at his plate and continued eating. That's when Patricia told me the real plan. If I didn't agree to marry Leonard, I would be thrown out onto the street with nothing. No money, no references, no support. She gave me 1 week to decide, 1 week to choose between becoming Leonard Wagner's wife or becoming homeless. What Patricia didn't know was that my 28th birthday was in exactly 1 week. What she didn't know was that I had been planning my revenge for months. And what she definitely didn't know was that I had been gathering evidence against her and her children for years. You see, 3 months earlier, I had started meeting secretly with Mr. Harrison. Together, we had hired a private investigator. What we discovered was beyond anything I had imagined. Patricia had been stealing from my father's company for years, small amounts at first, then larger and larger sums. She had taken over $3 million. Caroline had been embezzling too, using her position in father's business to siphon off another $1 million. And Jason? Jason was involved in illegal gambling and money laundering. He owed dangerous people over $5 million and had been using father's business to clean dirty money. But the worst discovery, the one that made my hands shake when I read the report, was about my mother's death. The investigator found hospital records showing that someone had tampered with my mother's car. The brake lines had been deliberately cut, and Patricia, who had been Mom's nurse, who had access to our garage, who had everything to gain from my mother's death, was the prime suspect. My mother hadn't died in an accident. She had been murdered. And I was going to make sure everyone knew it. The week before my birthday was the worst of my entire life. Patricia increased the pressure. Leonard started coming to the house, treating me like I already belonged to him. He would touch my waist when no one was looking, whisper disgusting things in my ear. One night, he cornered me in the kitchen and showed me a photo on his phone. It was a picture of bruises on a woman's arms. He smiled and said, "My last wife learned to obey me. You will too." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But instead I smiled weakly and nodded. Because I knew that in a few days everything would change. I just had to survive a little longer. 2 days before the gala, Caroline threw a party at our mansion. I was forced to serve drinks to her friends. They were all daughters of wealthy families, girls I had grown up with before everything changed. They didn't recognize me, or maybe they did and just didn't care. Caroline announced loudly that I was their servant, and everyone laughed. One of her friends, a girl named Melissa, asked if I even owned real clothes. Another one, Amanda, took a selfie with me in the background and posted it online with a caption mocking my appearance. Then Caroline did something that should have broken me, but instead made me even more determined. She poured an entire glass of red wine on my white serving shirt. It wasn't an accident. She looked me dead in the eye and did it deliberately. Then she smiled and said, "Clean it up, Audrey. That's what you're good for." I went to my room that night and pulled out my phone. I looked at all the evidence we had gathered. Bank statements, recordings, photographs, police reports. Everything was ready. In 2 days, at the charity gala, in front of 500 of the city's elite, I was going to destroy them, not just defeat them, destroy them completely. The morning of the gala, Patricia told me I wouldn't be attending as a guest. She had arranged for me to work as a waitress. She handed me a gray uniform dress with a white apron and told me to make sure my hair was pulled back tight. She wanted me to look as plain and forgettable as possible. She wanted me humiliated in front of everyone who mattered. I took the uniform without arguing. I even thanked her, which made her smile with satisfaction. She had no idea what was coming. None of them did. The gala was being held at the Grand Regency Hotel, the most prestigious venue in the city. As I arrived through the service entrance in my waitress uniform, carrying that cheap gray dress and white apron, I allowed myself a small smile, because the Grand Regency? I owned it. Through my mother's trust, through Harrington Global, I owned the entire building. Every crystal chandelier, every marble column, every piece of silverware I would be serving with. It was all mine. The ballroom was breathtaking. 500 guests in designer gowns and expensive tuxedos. Everyone who was anyone in our city was there. Politicians, celebrities, business moguls, socialites, and me, invisible in my gray uniform, carrying champagne trays and appetizers. I saw Patricia almost immediately. She was wearing a stunning red designer gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. She was surrounded by her friends, the wives of oil tycoons and fashion moguls and politicians, Margaret, Diane, and Susan. 3 women who had known my mother, who had attended her funeral, and who now laughed with the woman who killed her. Patricia spotted me carrying a champagne tray. She called out loudly, making sure everyone nearby could hear, "Oh, Audrey, come serve us." I walked over with the tray, my head down, playing the part perfectly. Patricia introduced me to her friends. "Ladies, this is my stepdaughter Audrey. She wanted to feel useful tonight, so we gave her a job." The laughter that followed was like knives. Margaret said something about how charitable it was. Diane commented on my uniform. Then Patricia, with that cruel smile I had come to know so well, took a glass of champagne from my tray and deliberately dropped it. The glass shattered at my feet, champagne splashing onto my shoes and legs. "Oh dear, how clumsy of me," Patricia said, her voice dripping with false concern. "Clean that up, won't you?" I knelt down right there in front of everyone with a cloth, wiping up champagne while they stood above me, laughing. People around us stopped to stare and whisper. I heard their comments. "Is that really her stepdaughter? How embarrassing. Poor girl." But as I knelt there on that marble floor, cleaning up Patricia's mess, I looked at my watch. It was 8:30. In 30 minutes, I would turn 28. In 30 minutes, everything would change. Caroline found me about 20 minutes later. She was with her usual group of friends, all of them dressed in designer gowns, all of them holding cocktails. She called me over to bring more appetizers. As I leaned forward with the tray, Caroline took a selfie. I was visible in the background, clearly serving her. She posted it immediately to her social media with a caption that said, "Even Cinderella served at balls. #CharityGala. #Know Your Place." Her friends erupted in laughter. They showed me the phone, making sure I saw the hundreds of likes and mocking comments already pouring in. Caroline looked at me with such satisfaction and said, "Look, you're famous." I smiled weakly and said, "Very clever, Caroline." What she didn't see was the fire burning behind my eyes. Dinner was announced at 8:45. Everyone took their seats at round tables decorated with white roses and gold candles. I continued serving, moving between tables with wine bottles and water pitchers. My family sat at the VIP table near the stage. Patricia, Father, Caroline, Jason, and then Leonard arrived, fashionably late and clearly drunk. He sat down next to Patricia and immediately grabbed my arm as I was pouring wine. "There's my future bride," he announced loudly. The entire table went quiet. Father looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Patricia beamed with satisfaction. "Yes, we'll be announcing their engagement tonight." Leonard pulled me onto his lap in front of everyone. I was mortified, struggling to break free without causing a scene. He whispered in my ear, but loud enough for others to hear, "Stop struggling. You're mine now." The table erupted in laughter. Caroline was recording it on her phone. Jason smirked and said, "Better get used to it, sister." I finally managed to break free and practically ran toward the service hallway. Behind me, I could hear their laughter echoing through the ballroom. In the service hallway, I was shaking with rage and humiliation. An older server named Betty found me and asked if I was okay. She had kind eyes and had been nice to me all evening. I looked at my watch. 8:57. 3 minutes. I smiled at Betty through my tears and said, "In 3 minutes, everything changes." She looked confused, but I didn't explain. I went to the staff bathroom and pulled out a bag I had hidden earlier that day. Inside was a stunning champagne-colored gown that had belonged to my mother, diamond jewelry from the Harrington family collection worth millions of dollars, professional makeup, everything I needed. I transformed myself completely. I let my hair down from that tight, severe bun. It fell in waves around my shoulders, just like my mother's used to. I applied makeup carefully, bringing out features that had been hidden for years. I put on the gown, and it fit perfectly. The jewelry sparkled under the bathroom lights. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in 7 years, I didn't see the broken servant girl. I saw Catherine Harrington's daughter. I saw the CEO of an $8.2 billion empire. I saw someone powerful. I checked my phone. 9 o'clock exactly. Happy birthday to me. When I walked back into that ballroom, everything stopped. I didn't enter through the service entrance this time. I walked through the main doors, the ones reserved for VIP guests. The entire room turned to look, 500 people in stunned silence. I heard gasps ripple through the crowd. People whispered, "Who is she?" "She's gorgeous." "Is that Audrey Harrington?" I walked slowly, confidently, down the center aisle toward the stage. Patricia's face went white as a sheet. Caroline's jaw literally dropped. Jason looked confused and then terrified. Father's eyes widened in shock, because in that moment I looked exactly like my mother must have looked at my age. Leonard spilled his drink all over himself. I reached the stage where Patricia had been about to make her announcement. I took the microphone from her shaking hand. The room was completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. "Hello, everyone," I said, my voice clear and strong. "I'm Audrey Harrington, and I have something to say." I checked my phone on purpose, showing everyone the time. As of exactly 9 o'clock tonight, I turned 28 years old. Confused murmurs spread through the crowd, which means, according to my late mother, Catherine Harrington's will, I am now the sole owner and CEO of Harrington Global. The room exploded in shocked gasps and exclamations. Patricia screamed, "That's impossible!" I smiled at her coldly. "Is it, Patricia? Shall we ask my lawyer?" Mr. Harrison stepped out from where he had been waiting in the crowd. He joined me on stage with documents in hand. "I can confirm," he announced to the room, "that Audrey Harrington is the legal heir to the Harrington estate. As of 9 o'clock tonight, the trust has been activated. She now controls all assets of Harrington Global." I turned to address the stunned crowd. "That includes this hotel? The Grand Regency? I own it." More gasps. "The Harrington Medical Center that many of you support? Mine." I paused for effect. "Harrington Pharmaceuticals? Mine." I looked directly at Patricia. "And the charity you're all donating to tonight? I founded it 6 months ago in my mother's name." Patricia tried to speak, but I cut her off. "But that's not all I want to share with you tonight." The large screens around the ballroom that had been showing elegant photos of the charity suddenly lit up with different images, bank statements, Transfer records. You see, Patricia here has been stealing from my father's company. Over $3 million in the past 5 years. The screens showed every transaction, every forged signature, every stolen penny. Father's face showed pure shock and then rage. He grabbed Patricia's arm, but I wasn't done. And Caroline, my dear sister. Caroline's face went from pale to red. Images of forged documents appeared on the screens. You've been embezzling from Father's company too. Another $1.2 million. Caroline screamed that I couldn't prove it, but 3 FBI agents stepped forward from where they had been waiting in the crowd. Agents I had arranged to be there. Oh, I can prove it, Caroline. These federal agents can confirm everything. Caroline's face crumbled as reality hit her, but I still wasn't finished. And Jason, my cruel brother. Videos began playing on the screens. Underground gambling dens, illegal poker games, money changing hands. You owe the Romano crime family $5 million, and you've been laundering money through Father's business to try to pay them back. Jason tried to run. He actually got up and tried to bolt for the exit, but security guards I had hired blocked every door. He was trapped. The FBI agents moved toward him with handcuffs ready. But the person I really want to address, I said, my voice dropping lower, more dangerous, is you, Patricia. The screens changed again. Hospital records, police reports, investigation documents. 7 years ago, my mother died in what everyone thought was a car accident. But these records show that someone tampered with her car the night she died. The room went completely silent. You could feel the horror spreading through the crowd. Patricia was my mother's nurse. She had access to our home, our garage, and these phone records show that she was having an affair with my father while my mother was still alive. Father made a choking sound. He had genuinely not known about the affair. But here's the real evidence. I played an audio recording. Patricia's voice came through the speakers, crystal clear. She was talking to someone named Mr. Cole, discussing how Catherine's death was necessary and how they just needed to wait for the trust to expire. The room erupted in chaos. People were screaming, crying, backing away from Patricia in horror. Police officers I had coordinated with moved through the crowd. Patricia was screaming that I was lying, that it was all fake, that I was crazy. But the evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. She was handcuffed right there on stage, still in her red designer gown. "You ungrateful little brat!" she screamed at me as they led her away. "I gave you a home." I leaned close to her and whispered so only she could hear, "You gave me nothing. You took my mother. Now I'm taking everything from you." Caroline was arrested next for embezzlement and fraud. She was crying, her makeup running down her face, begging Father to help her. But he turned away. He couldn't even look at her. Jason was already in handcuffs, being led out for money laundering and racketeering charges. He didn't say a word. For once in his life, Jason had nothing cruel to say. Then I called out, "Leonard Wagner, don't you dare try to leave." Leonard had been trying to slip away quietly through the crowd. Police stopped him at the door. "Mr. Wagner is wanted in 3 states for domestic violence, and his last wife didn't just leave him. We found her body 3 months ago buried on his property." The crowd gasped in horror as Leonard was arrested for murder. In less than 10 minutes, I had destroyed them all. In front of 500 witnesses, I had exposed every crime, every cruelty, every evil thing they had done. And it felt like justice. It felt like my mother was finally getting the truth she deserved. But there was one more person to address. My father approached me slowly. He was crying, tears streaming down his face. "Audrey," he whispered, "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about any of this." I looked at him for a long moment. This man who had let me suffer for 7 years. This man who had been too weak to protect his own daughter. "You didn't want to know," I said coldly. "You let her abuse me for 7 years. You let me become a servant in my own mother's house." He fell to his knees right there in front of everyone. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was weak. I missed your mother so much, and I failed you. I handed him a document. This is a restraining order. You're not allowed near any Harrington property. You're also fired from your position in Mom's company. His face crumbled. But I'm not pressing charges against you. You were manipulated, but you were also a coward. Now you'll have to live with that. I walked away from him without looking back. I returned to the microphone and addressed the shocked crowd one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the drama tonight, but some truths need to be spoken publicly. My mother, Catherine Harrington, built an empire on kindness and integrity. She believed in helping those who had no voice. Tonight, I'm pledging $50 million to establish the Catherine Harrington Foundation. It will help abuse victims, orphans, and women escaping dangerous situations. The crowd erupted in applause. It started slow and then built into a standing ovation. 500 people on their feet, clapping for the girl they had just watched serving drinks an hour ago. And the woman you saw serving champagne tonight? That was me experiencing what many people face every day: humiliation, powerlessness, invisibility. I will never forget it, and I will use every resource I have to fight against it. The applause was deafening. People were crying, moved by everything they had witnessed. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. It was about speaking up for everyone who had ever been made to feel small. That was 6 months ago. Today, I'm the CEO of Harrington Global. I work 80 hours a week, but I love every minute of it. Patricia is serving 20 years in prison for conspiracy to commit murder. Caroline got 7 years for embezzlement. Jason got 15 years for money laundering and racketeering. And Leonard? He's serving life without parole for murdering his previous wife. They found evidence connecting him to 2 other disappearances as well. My father lives alone now in a small apartment across town. I see him once a month. Our relationship is complicated and probably always will be. But he's in therapy, trying to become the man my mother fell in love with. I haven't forgiven him yet. I don't know if I ever fully will, but I'm giving him a chance to earn back some small part of my respect. The Catherine Harrington Foundation has helped over 5,000 women escape abusive situations. We've opened 3 shelters and funded 24 programs. The mansion where I suffered for 7 years, I donated it to become a recovery center for trauma victims. I live in a beautiful but modest penthouse now. No servants, no pretense, just me and the empire my mother built. Sometimes I still wear gray dresses and pull my hair back in a bun. Not because anyone forces me to anymore, but because I never want to forget where I came from. I never want to forget what it felt like to be invisible, to be treated like nothing, because that memory keeps me grounded. It keeps me fighting for people who are still living that nightmare. People ask me all the time if I regret those 7 years of suffering. The answer is always no, because that suffering taught me empathy. Humiliation taught me humility. Injustice taught me to fight. Patricia thought that breaking me would make me weak. Instead, it made me unbreakable. So to anyone out there who's being treated like they're nothing, I want you to hear this. The people who laugh at you, who mock you, who try to make you feel small, they do it because they fear who you might become. Your time will come. Mine came at a charity gala where I served champagne to the woman who killed my mother. Where will yours be? When will you stop accepting their cruelty and start claiming your power? They laughed when I scrubbed their floors. They mocked when I served their champagne. But I had the last laugh when I owned the building they stood in, the charity they supported, and the truth they tried to hide. Remember that the next time someone tries to make you feel less than you are, the person pouring your coffee might own the entire coffee company. The servant in the gray dress might be a billionaire in disguise. Treat everyone with respect and dignity, because you never really know who they are or what they're capable of becoming. My mother used to tell me that justice delayed is not justice denied. She was right. It took 7 years, but justice finally came. And it was sweeter than anything I could have imagined. Not because I destroyed them, although that was satisfying, but because in destroying them, I freed myself. I became who my mother always knew I could be. Strong, powerful, unbreakable. And that, more than any amount of money, more than any revenge, is what really matters. They laughed when she quit, but her hidden billionaire past wiped the smile off their faces. And now? Now she's changing the world. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button right now. Subscribe, because next week's story is even more insane, and drop a comment telling me what you would have done to Patricia. Would you have shown mercy? I want to know what you think. I'll see you in the next one, and remember, treat everyone with respect. You never know who they really are or what empire they might be hiding. The person you underestimate today might be the one who owns your tomorrow.